Okay, hi. So I wanted to follow up on the video that I did last week on HIIT training. I got some more questions kind of about that to elaborate on that because of that video, but also before the video. Like I said, I wanted to do a couple of videos about HIIT training and using NIRS for HIIT training because I think there's a lot of potential there. And so we do, like we said, for Moxie Monitor, we have a guide out to give some examples how to do HIIT training. And there's lots of variations on how you can do HIIT training. There's actually a two-part paper by Larson and Boucher, I believe, that talk about they do a nice job in showing all the different variations or the parameters that you can alter to adapt your HIIT training. And all those parameters are probably important. Now, I think NIRS can help you individualize a bunch of those parameters. So what I'm going to talk about, one is kind of these classical, kind of longer HIIT trainings and how I think they're effective and why I think they're effective. Okay, sorry about that cut, which got interrupted in the lab here. To try to get back to my train of thought. So, kind of classical HIIT variations and why I think they are quite effective. One example is kind of these 4 times 4 minutes. So these kind of high intensity bouts, but for longer periods of time, you know, not 30-second kind of intervals, but really 3, 4, 5, 6 minute intervals, and those repeated. What those intervals do, they elicit a very high VO2. So if you do very short intervals, you don't elicit maximum VO2. And you have to do longer intervals to actually get a high VO2. So the argument is that if you want to do a training that's going to maximize some kind of oxygen supply, we want to make sure that you're doing high intensity work so you really get that oxygen, that VO2 up, but you want to do it long enough to allow you to get to the maximum VO2 values. And so our rationale if using the Moxie to make sure that you're doing this properly is that as long as you are able to desaturate, so your muscle oxygenation value is going down, you are actually sending a signal to your cardiovascular system, your cardiopulmonary system, indicating that you want more oxygen. That's why, because you're in a negative balance, SMO2 is going down, you want more oxygen to fuel your muscle. So as long as that value is going down, the feedback should be, I need more oxygen, meaning I'm trying to increase my VO2 the entire time, okay? So that's the goal of these kind of longer hits. You want a gradual decrease in SMO2 over the entire period of time. If you kind of hit your bottom SMO2 value range, you're running into serious problems just of fatiguing before actually ending your whatever time interval, 3, 4, 5, 6 minute interval. Once you kind of bottom that out, the chances are you won't be able to continue, and then you didn't get the duration that you wanted. That's why you want this kind of gradual decrease over the entire period of time. There's a nice, to talk a little bit about the effectiveness, does this type of training then really actually get the cardiovascular response that you want, kind of this building up of your oxygen supply system. There's some nice work done by a Norwegian group too, where they go through and they compare a bunch of different training regimes. And it does show that this kind of 4 times 4 minutes type is the training that has the highest effect on change in VO2 and the highest effect in change in stroke volume, which are going to be linked together, but is really the training effect that we want to look for. Seems to be quite effective. Now that's not to say that you're going to get rid of the long, slow distance training or anything like that. I don't want people to start getting mad at me. But properly coordinated HIIT trainings do seem to have a place in increasing VO2 capacity. So and specifically on the supply side of things in these longer HIIT intervals. So if you feel you need to work on the supply side of your VO2, so you need to work on the ability to mobilize oxygen, move oxygen to the muscles, so your cardiopulmonary system, and you have a nearest device to use that, you can very effectively control that by just having this continuous gradual decrease in SMO2 over the entire period of time that you are doing your 3, 4, 5, or 6 minute interval. Now, just from a practical point of view, what this is going to look like. When you start your interval, you're always going to have a pretty hard drop off in SMO2. So that shouldn't freak people out. That's because that's the biggest performance change, is from whatever your rest is to starting the interval. And as your supply system, as your cardiopulmonary system ramps up to match that, the decrease will flatten. And now you may be looking at a 10% decrease over a time of 3 or 4 minutes. Okay, that's what I'm saying. A gradual decrease. It's clear, but it's subtle. Okay, some people, it kind of depends on how big that drop off was at the beginning and how big your range is. You may be looking at 20% over 3, 4, 5 minutes, or 10% over 3, 4, 5 minutes. But what you don't want to see is, you don't want that value going back up. If that value is going back up, the intensity is too low, and then the feedback to maximize VO2 won't be there, okay? Or you're just tired and you start activating less, and demand goes down in the muscle. So, and you'll notice the difference. If the value score is going back up and you feel real easy, real good, it's likely that you're not pushing hard enough. So you gotta up the tempo a bit. And if it's going back up and you feel really tired and you can't maintain, it's likely you're too tired, and you probably shouldn't be continuing your intervals anyways. Those are some useful tips on how you're going to be using your NIRS in these kind of what we call gradual desaturation HIIT intervals. I hope that helped. It was maybe a little bit long. I ranted a bit, but I'll do another one next week on shorter type intervals. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.